Welcome to Chicago Landlord Secrets. I got Tim Harstead here with me, my partner in crime here on us exploring doing these lives here on a weekly basis. Tim, how you doing today?
Doing good, doing good. We made it to three in a row. I think we got past I think for New Year's resolution, what? It's like the third Tuesday is the drop off. So, we made it 3 weeks. We beat out most of the resolution people.
I love it. When me and Tom were planning starting up straight up Chicago, we saw the record that most people don't make it past episodes 10, and me and him were like, all right, we're gonna record all 10 before we or all 11 before we go live with the first one, just to make sure we beat that number at least. So I'm still amazed what me and Tom were able to do. Put halfway quality product out 6 times a month for going on year 6. So that still shocks me that
Yeah.
I was able to pull that off.
No, absolutely. You guys have become legends in the world of meetups and all that stuff. So you guys are. It's funny seeing seeing other people that aren't you guys with like them either with your logo in the background or some kind of thing that they came to your studio to record, and then that being their profile picture. To me, that's like the sign of you made it. Like you're big enough where people care that they're a guest and they actually want to show that off is amazing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. The biggest thing for me, I had that maybe the proudest, I guess, was I went to a Bulls game and somebody was wearing a T-shirt that they must have bought off the merch store, and my son was with me. So that's when my son finally started realizing that I'm not as big of a dork. He still thinks I'm a dork, but so how are things going in the property management world for you this week, man?
Doing okay. We had our we finally got a bursted pipe. uh I feel like it's doomed to happen no matter what. However, this one, remember, we were talking before about putting the heaters in and keeping everything good. So we actually did not, knock on wood. We're warming up, so we're still not fully out, but we didn't have any bursted pipes in the properties that we managed. We took over a new property. The owner wasn't in town and mailed us the key, and we took over yesterday and went in for the first time and found the pipe busted.
Wow.
So unfortunately, it turned out, or at least from everything we can see, they didn't have power or gas on because the unit was vacant, but they did have water because of the tenants upstairs. And that's a huge one. I think that I guess we can talk and sort of bring up is, when you take over a property, even when it's vacant, saving a few dollars up front. I feel like a lot of times we want to save a few dollars and we end up spending thousands because we didn't want to turn the heat on to a vacant unit in winter. Um, yeah, so that's the situation we're dealing with. It wasn't too bad. It was a small pipe that burst, but and some carpet that we'll probably have to tear out. But just a lesson learned, and yeah, so we managed to keep our property safe, but we did somehow we still got one that we had to deal with.
Well, we take over vacant properties all the time, like you, and a lot of ours are self-managing, way too busy. They're local for the most part, but the tenant
Mhm.
moves out and they're just done. They don't want to go through the process, and a lot of times they forget to move the utilities back into their name after the tenant moves out. And we had that.
Yeah.
We finally got keys from somebody the other day. After we even told them multiple times, like, "Hey, man, you got to put like, yeah, I'll get to it." And we sure enough, we showed up there. And the first thing was the neighbor running out of the driveway saying, "Oh, I'm so happy you're here. There's been water flowing into my house for 29 hours," something like that, because it was going outside, so that his whole basement was messed up. So he had to do an insurance claim. We're gonna do the rehab from. I mean, it is it stinks for him. He'll get it covered. Insurance will probably go up. We'll get some work, but like, yeah, what a headache. And we had another crazy one this week too, and something to look out for. That we manage a 4 flat in Logan Square, and all but four, it's all but one unit is occupied. They kept the one open for FHA buyer, and
Mhm.
they the heat never got flipped on in that unit. So he's using an outside broker. GC's not selling it, and we didn't go in that particular unit because the broker's been handling everything, and the broker didn't turn the heat on either. So we end up dealing with a burst of pipe there as well too. Now, if we're going to talk about extreme ownership, we're talking about our team. We should have, whether the broker thought they're doing it or not, we should have still probably stopped over there and checked that out. But minimal damage, and we're somewhat lucky. So, but we'll see. But yeah, that was another one. Properties are for sale. at this time of year. That's always such a risk. And you don't even have to be a landlord if you're doing your flips, or if you're just Aunt Sue selling her house that is empty. There's always that risk.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. I think the other one that we've been it's we've talked about the squatter things quite a bit the first 2 weeks that we've been on here, and I'm going to bring it up again. But I think power on, having utilities on. The other thing for vacant properties, especially depending on the area, is getting an alarm system. You can get the portable ones from like Simply Safe and things like that are cheap nowadays. And with as hard as it is to get squatters out, it's and now even from what I'm sort of jumping ahead into talking about the squatter situation. From what I'm gathering is, if you can, we're going to have to show some proof to the police that they're squatters and not tenants. And the more information coming in as we get through this process, that seems to be what the case is going to be. So having an alarm system that goes off and having a record that, hey, this alarm went off yesterday and now there's a squatter there, is going to be huge. That you can show that along with the deed and along with a couple other things. And I'll jump into where I was going with that. So we actually got a call. We have squatters that we've been trying to figure out what the best route is with them. And the neighbors made a complaint to the police about the squatters yesterday. We got a call from the police talking about it. And luckily the neighbors called them squatters and said, hey, someone broke in and blah, blah, blah. So we're now working with CPD to get them out. They told us what we need to bring to them, being a deed and being a copy of the leases that we use and things like that. So we're bringing all that over. Hopefully next week we'll have some good news that we got them out. But it does appear from experience, now we're a month and 6 days in, that the police are looking for us to show them proof that they're squatters versus them having to show proof that they're renters.
That is news to my ear. I'm not sure if it was before we recorded last week or not, but you sent me the article about the other one that made the news. That
was right after. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that was in Roseland. She finally got her property back after the guy was taunting him. The guy got arrested on multiple different counts. The guy that was in that house, I believe he was a registered sex offender that violated his laws there. He was, I think, violated parole. He ultimately, if they would have just like ran his proper information, they would have got him a whole bunch of other things to start. But either way, I'm super grateful that this is happening. And I think people like you and me, all we could do is continue to talk about the examples that it's not working, and praise the moments where CBD is actually doing what we all hope they would. Because again, they have to, they're taking the risk on their job. They make a dumb mistake, man, the news will be all over that just as much as 10 times more than if they do something right. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. And I can't wait to, when you get that person out, we gotta talk about that too. And we gotta put that out there.
I will, I'm going to try to do everything I can to get it to be the news. Be the news in the sense of having it recorded and get as much as I can. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, the fact that they reached out to us, because frankly, we've been, we got this squatter at, somewhere in the end of November, and normally we would file for eviction right away. But we're like, well, an eviction's 8 months and we're 30 days away from this new law. And then the first week of January, we started seeing the reports that the cops aren't doing anything. So we're like, all right, let's hold off. We don't want to put them on the radar that we have the squatter yet, because we don't know what's going to happen. So luckily we got the call from them. So we're going to see how this goes next week, and hopefully we can get them out and have some good news for everyone, and sort of some guidelines of how we got it accomplished.
Love it. What people are going to think this is a squatter podcast, squatter and broken pipe podcast. One thing I want to bring up to you that I think is so important. I was talking with somebody yesterday and today, is just their understanding about leasing. I know a lot of landlords, they will put their place just on Zillow, and they're kind of really only limited to Zillow, Trulia, and Hotpads at that point, when you and me both have software that will syndicate to everywhere else. It does Zillow, Trulia, and Hotpads, but we have the ability to put it on the MLS, which also syndicates a whole bunch of different places. I was actually explaining the whole syndication conversation or world
Hmm.
to a group of investors a few weeks ago of understanding like, hey, you should only have to put it on once and then it goes forever else, or maybe twice, you put it on the MLS too. But that's a big deal. And I think as I put a bunch of information out. I took all of our 2025 data for leasing and how long it takes to lease. And there was a trend towards the second part of the year of it actually taking a little longer to start getting things leased. And now I actually pulled the data from 2024, and I was going to see if that trend started earlier because I do think that rental rates are going to cap off. I think we're trying to push them. I don't think we can push them as high as we're going to think we're going to push them this year, and that will start to create longer market time. So where's your head at as far as that goes, and going in 2026 for rental rates and time
Yeah.
to market?
So yeah, there's a lot there. So I'll break it down a little bit of what I think on what you said. One, that's my favorite question to get from clients is like, where do you guys post? And to be honest with you, because we syndicate, I can probably rattle off 100 sites, but we probably post to 1,000. That's the great thing about using a software that can syndicate is they're putting on sites that you're not even sure if anyone's ever going to go, but it doesn't matter because you just want it on all that. I will throw out one caveat is double check the big ones because like Zillow and Homes.com and stuff like that, syndication is not 100% perfect all the time. And sometimes you got to log in, and it's still way better to have 98% of it done. But we just had one now that, it popped up on one of the websites as saying that we require a security deposit, which we do move-in fees. So we had to log in and get that fixed. And, obviously it's nowhere in our software that it says that. So this the system on the website decided to do it. So always check the big ones, make sure that they're showing the right thing. Um, in terms of the slowdown, I think we're at like a 5% rate that's normal. That's normal for like increases. And the problem is that's annual, right? Every year we probably between 5 and 10% if you're keeping up with inflation and all that stuff. The problem is in 2021, 2022, we were seeing increases of 10, 20, 25% on rentals, and that's not sustainable. So I think we overshot the market in a lot of areas and really over rent it in some cases, and we're starting to see prices decrease in some areas. And I don't think it's necessarily a decrease in the market. I think it's just that we did really well for our clients, getting them increases that probably wouldn't have been something that we should have went and got that high, but we took the increase and now we can't keep up with it, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, it makes sense. I put and it's not out there, but so we did 1,019 lease renewals last year, and of them, 10% of them had 18.6. I'm sorry, 18. So just under 20% of those thousand, so it's called 180 of them, had over 10% increases. And our median average was 6%, and our average was 7%. So that was
Hmm.
kind of how we fell last year, which I'm excited to pull 2024 and see how that compared, because I thought this year was much conservative, and I just don't think we're going to be able to see that trend continue. So
Yeah, and it's what, Chicago's sort of weird in that sense of on the house on the sales side of things, right? Like if you go out to the coast, they're having this happen in the sales right now, where the cost of buying a condo or buying a house on either coast, either east or west, was so inflated in 21, 22, 23 that they're finally starting to come back down to earth. Chicago, luckily, we had increases, but it wasn't as crazy as those. So we're not seeing that pullback on the sales side. But on the rentals, I think we just, we overshot a little bit, and the market's coming back down, which I much rather overshoot and make more money for 2 years than to undershoot. So it's not a bad thing. It's just something in reality we have to deal with now, and keep prices, adjust prices, and make sure we get them rented quicker that way.
so here's the bigger thing, and I'm going to make you go probably tonight and look at your data. For us, for who renewed versus didn't, we were at 72%. So we had
Jeez.
72% renew. I looked this up. I've been always kind of keeping an eye on this, but in the city, you're right about what was it 66% renewal rate. That's
Mm.
so just over every 3 years is kind of your average stay. Did you know like the nationwide, like it's in like the high 50s, like so like as far as renewals, like that's crazy. So if we're cranking out, I imagine you have something similar in the high 60s, low 70s, like compared to the national average, like that's such a sign of a strong, all right, that's such a sign of either um good landlords or lack of inventory or a few different kind of things that kind of makes you think of.
I think in Chicago specifically, I think I mean, we have a huge, I think we're something like 1 million or 2 million homes under what needs to be constructed to actually have enough homes for everyone that we're supposed to. So it's a lot lack of inventory, and it's the prices going up and people realizing, you know what, I'm just going to pay it because I probably can't afford to move anyways. Um, Obviously, if you're a crappy landlord or a slumlord or anything like that, then people are going to move on you and they're going to find a way to get out. But if you make the home livable and safe and all that stuff for the tenants, it's a hassle to move. People don't want to. I will say this though, on the landlord side, is if you're renewing at 90 to 100%, on the flip side of that, your prices are way too low. Like when we inherit a property and they haven't had a tenant for 30 years, the tenant's probably paying a third, if not 25% of market rate. Um, it's like a frog in boiling water, right? If you pour put a frog in boiling water, they jump out. But if you raise the temperature a little bit each year, you end up boiling them. Um, I don't know why that's a thing, but or a phrase, but that's the example I always use. Uh, but if you're increasing 5-10% a year, $50, $100 a year, you're going to keep up with inflation, keep up with taxes, all that stuff. If you're one of the landlords that doesn't increase rent for 5 years, and then all of a sudden you go, oh shit, my property taxes went up, and you try to go increase 5 years worth of increases in 1 year, that tenant's leaving. And now
Yeah.
you got to turn, and now you got all this stuff to deal with.
Well, because more than likely your unit's probably pretty outdated as well too in those situations. So it's hard to
Mm-hmm.
even get as high as market. Because I imagine you see this too a lot. A lot of self-managing landlords, they will keep the rent low in order to offset of either the tenant complaining a lot or the tenant moving.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we get higher, like, well, you know what, I'm probably at $500-$600 or $400 under rent, so I can afford to pay your management fee. And if you could get the rents up, it's like, all right, but we have to explain to them like, hey, listen, these rents are lower because this. It's gonna be hard to make a big jump on that because um, it's just gonna be difficult to do that. So we have to have those explanations or conversations often.
And for landlords out there, it's the same. It's the same concept with maintenance, right? If you're taking care of the property and doing upkeep every year, when that tenant moves out, you're probably gonna have to slap some paint on it and call it a day. If you're letting all your systems fail and not cleaning the furnace, not cleaning the gutters, your roof has shingles falling off, and you're not putting them back on, etc. Now, when that tenant moves out of that house, you have a $30,000, $40,000 job to get it rentable again. Um, and it also comes down to if you're not ever going there to look on the tenant and see what's going on, and the tenant's been living there for 3 years and trashing the place, again, you don't want 95% renewal. Some tenants aren't good, and you want to get rid of them before they do more damage. So if you've had a tenant for 10 years that's not taking care of the place and you're not putting your foot down, you're going to have big bills at the end.
I ran took all of the chats we have in our renewal app in our system, and I ran through AI. And a large part of the conversation, it couldn't give me a percentage, but there's a lot of talk around, I want to buy a house, but I can't yet, or I can't find a place. A lot of people asking, can I go month to month because I want to buy a place? So I imagine the tightness of the inventory is one of the bigger things that's keeping people in there. It's like, I don't want to move for another year when my goal is ultimately buy a house. Like, I'd rather save that money because it does still cost money to move, right? And more likely you're going to pay an increase. And you got to get adjusted to a new lifestyle. But that is something that we saw a lot in 2025, that people are just sticking around because they can't find a place yet to buy.
So I know our answer, but I'm curious, what do you guys do in that situation? And then I'll give you what we do. But A tenant comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm not renewing. I need an extra 3 or 4 months because I'm buying, etc."
We do give them an option to go month to month, but there's some sort of fee or some sort of increased rent. There's some sort of offset of risk. Now, if that 4 months ends in December, then the conversation might be a little different. We might say, hey, listen, sign a 6-month lease and you're at least till February, and we kind of hold your feet to that. A lot of times it's not a case by case. How do you guys handle it?
Like we have a colleague in the industry, Todd. We charge for it.
Yeah.
Is the best way, and that's it's a theory that I like, and I forget who said this to us, but try to say no as little as possible. Try to put a price to it. So to your point, we're going to charge extra for you to go month to month. And same thing with that December stuff is, if you're trying to move out in December, it's going to cost more than April. And sometimes it's beneficial, going back to the leasing cycle. So I think this year was a little bit different. I think last year and the previous years, we hit the cycle like normal, whereas like November to February is just slow in comparison. So if you have a tenant that's their lease is over in February and they want to stay a couple extra months, I'm doing everything I can to let them and to keep them. If they're going to be out in June or May at a perfect time, like I want to get those leases in that cycle. But yeah, having your landlords. I mean, I know for sure that if you're using the standard car lease, it already has a month-to-month premium in there. We have our own in our lease that has it. It should be something that says, hey, we're not gonna if you're not gonna leave, we're not necessarily gonna kick you out, but you're gonna pay us for it.
So do you ever enforce, because there is a holdover clause there, you ever enforce that? Or do you kind of
We have
substitute?
we have a substitute. It is a holdover clause, but we
Yeah.
rewrote it.
You just rewrote it because
So
usually
we have a very similar. We're actually not as mean as the car lease because that one is like I think it's 50% or something. It's a big number. So we're not that mean, but it is definitely more than what your renewal rate would be.
in our commercial leases, because we manage a lot of industrial, I believe it's sometimes 2 to 3 times the cost of 1 month's rent for a holdover. And sometimes they'll jam them if they're difficult, and they even just stay like 10 days or something like that. And then it comes to negotiation at that point. But yeah, that's holdover is far tougher than what we ever actually do negotiate with the residents.
So I saw this on Facebook, and I'll bring it up because it's sort of along the topic, and it's an interesting concept that I see people, and I don't know where the logic comes from. Maybe or whatever, but it's a weird thing I see people posting about. Hey, my tenant is late on rent for the last 2 months. I was thinking about filing the eviction, but their lease ends next month. What should I do?
Well, for us, we never file till they're a month and $10 over, so they have to be 105% over. So you kind of got those 2 months
Yep.
worth. So I guess if it falls in that parameters, it doesn't matter. If they're ballsy enough not to pay rent, they're probably ballsy to not leave when they're supposed to also. So like you can't take
That's
that risk.
that's the point I was bringing up. I saw that. My first thought was like, I mean, if they're not just leaving because they can't afford the rent, they're not going to leave and just be like, okay, I'm moving out. It's time to move. Uh, so I always find that funny when people think that like magically the tenant's going to listen to the end of their lease when they haven't listened to any other lease terms.
That just ends up being hedging your risk at that point. You have to have now. If you gave them a 120-day notice that you delivered, and they're supposed to be leaving, and maybe they're stockpiling that money to put towards their new payment, and you could file for possession using the 120-day notice or the 60-day notice or whatever, then yes, you're good. You don't have to file. But more likely on those Facebook groups, that wasn't the case, and they really have um, no other way to get their unit back short of hoping they leave.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
it. We just recorded a podcast episode here before you and me jumped on here, and my tip for the week was along those same lines of I talked to a lot of and this is like over my career, right? This is not even just a recent thing. Landlords are like, you know what? I think I'm just gonna do month-to-month leases because if I don't like the person, I could get them out. Or I think, she paid rent slow a couple times. I'm gonna keep them month to month just in case. Like maybe this is not gonna work out. And my whole tip was around two things. One, whether you have a month-to-month lease or a 10-year lease, it's still going to go through the same pain if you have to go through the court system. And then two, kind of on the human to human level, when a tenant signs a lease, it ends up being a level of commitment as well too. Like, I'm committed, I'm living here, my family's here, and I'm going to continue to be here and maybe even be a better tenant because I'm committed to being here. So I think a lot of when owners are taking that stance of, I'll keep it month to month, so I have options. You really don't have options, and you're kind of getting the worst.
And especially in Chicago, because you have depending on how long they've been there, it doesn't matter if they're month to month. You still have to give a 4-month leeway to get them out. And again, and I think another point to this is, we were talking about renewals and not wanting to renew people. If you have that tenant that's constantly late 2-3 weeks or whatever, it most likely they're living paycheck to paycheck, and they're one Murphy away from something happening and them missing a month, then you evicting. So if you know that ahead of time and you got through that first year of the lease, it may not be a tenant you want to keep. It may be worth non-renewing versus, even the thought process of do I renew or do I go month to month? Like, sometimes count your blessings that you got all 12 months of rent and then get them out and get a tenant that's more stable, because they might have made it 12 months, but they're not going to make it 15. And now you have 8 months of no rent, where if you come up with some reason of why you're not renewing them, and it's, hey, whatever, we want to redo this kitchen or whatever, they leave. They don't think it's anything against them, and they're the next landlord's problem. But really, you're catching that, hey, they're going to be an issue in 6 months because they're not paying on time.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And maybe we shouldn't gloss over that, because maybe we kind of assume people know that. Maybe that's something we should share it. Two, if you have in Cook County, if you have a tenant that's been there for less than 3 years, you still have to give 60-day notice. So the month to month concept is really not month to month. It's a month to 60 days lease you technically have. And if you're there for more than 3 years, you have to give 120-day notice, and that's inherited. So even if you bought a building last week and you've only had this tenant for a week, if they've been there for 12 years, you still have to give them 120-day notice. And I know a lot of people that are buying units and wanting to renovate them after the tenant leaves. They want to come in, give it a 30-day notice because they're month to month. You just can't do that. And there's, I believe it is from the time they're, you have to give them a whole another 120 days plus. There's some sort of, the tenant, if you mess that up, the tenant gets extended time in there. Now they have to pay, but if they're not paying, this is even bigger of a problem around the notice.
Yeah, you basically have to start all over. So you have to give notice again and do all that. So yeah, it's a big deal. And I think the funny thing about that law, and it was put in by Lori Lightfoot during COVID, you know who hates it the most? The tenants that we deal with.
Yeah.
They get when we call them 5 months out, 4 months out, asking about renewals, they're like, it's February. Why do you think first of all, I can't see any apartments that are listed yet. So how am I supposed to know I want to move in June? Because I don't know what the competition is. And I can't like look at anything. I don't know if I haven't thought that far. And they're the ones that actually get aggravated. Unfortunately, that's a law put in to protect them. But that's I don't get owners that really owners get upset when they missed it or they didn't know and they weren't working a property manager and they miss sending the notice properly, then they hate the law. But if they know the law and they follow it, it's never that big of a deal. But tenants hate it, which is the funniest part about it. It's set to protect them, and they're like, "This is stupid. Why do I have to decide if I want to renew or not, or a price increase in February for June?"
Yeah. When I was going through all the data from last year, our biggest months were, I think, January, February, March, or something like that. And it's like, so you're calling, we're after the season, you're talking, it's cold out, and they're not supposed to even think about moving for another 4 months, and you're hitting them with that. But one other thing about the notice that a lot of people don't realize is, like, so today's February 4th, right? And say you have a tenant that's only been there for a year, right? And you want to give them 60-day notice. Now, technically, that notice, it doesn't go through April 4th. It goes through April 30th. So your 60-day notice, if you're giving it after the first of the month, technically goes to the end of the second month. So right now, if Tim, you're giving me notice, and you're giving me 60-day notice, I technically have till April 30th. It's only 30 days April. Yeah. So right, that's how that works, right?
Yep, no, 100%. It is basically what you want to do is day one is always going to be the next first of the month. It's not six. They really should change the wording. It's 4 calendar months or 2 calendar months. The 60-day notice is two full calendar months, and the 120-day notice is 4 full calendar months. So they really should change the wording on that, but legally that's what it's called, 120-day notice. But it really means, you have to give them 4 full months. So if you serve it now, the first full month is March, then April, then May, June 30th, or 30, whatever. Yeah, I think it's June 30th. They have to be out.
And I don't have in front of me, but it follows through I just put somebody asked about it's called the fair notice ordinance. And that's what it's called through Chicago. But I believe the Cook County RTLO has similar dates, right? I'm pretty sure they have some sort of notice.
They don't. I don't think that Cook County has the 120. I think they're all 60, but they
Yeah,
also don't have a 30. So I think Cook County is like 60 across the board.
yeah. Um, and that fair notice, I put the link in there because Denzel asked the question, "What's the law called?"
Yep.
That also talks about the raising the rent. You have to give notice to raise rent. So, along those same lines, say you don't want to get the tenant out and you do want to increase it, you still do need to give 60 days to a tenant that's been there for less than 3 years, and then 120-day notice. And if you don't give that notice, then they get additional 60 or 120 days at that same rent on top of that. So
For sure. You were talking about we were talking about tenants and cash piling when they know 120 days are coming, and where you see that a lot, where like, hey, I'm not going to renew you, and then all of a sudden the last month they're not paying. I think it used to be a security deposit thing. They knew you would take it out of their security deposits. They weren't going to pay, but then you had no money for damages. Um, but you're also talking about that sale in Logan Square. It had me thinking, do you guys experience that too with sales? We at least in our area we do, where we manage on the south side of Chicago, where when you put something up for sale, all of a sudden tenants become a lot harder to collect from. I don't know if you've had any experience with that.
um, we don't necessarily. A lot of times, when we're selling some of the multi stuff in the suburbs, the tenants, we don't put a lot of stuff on the market, so we'll do a lot of stuff off market, or they don't realize it's on LoopNet, or we won't put a sign out front and stuff like that. So a lot of times they don't know, because in DuPage County, Kane County, you don't have to give notice that you're trying to sell it. So it's a little looser out there. But no, I don't necessarily run into that issue. But on the south side, we have ran into that issue before. And what I always try to counter that with is, because when we used to sell this, we bought all this property on the south side and we sold them all really off as investments. And if there's any balances, whenever you have to sell a property, it's always messier if there's balances. And we used to always negotiate some of that stuff back to zero, so we didn't have to say there's a balance. We maybe collected a little bit. The tenant, it was kind of a going away present, and the new guy got a clean slate, and hopefully they paid them at that point.
Yeah, no, we've experienced that too, and I think I think the tenants are smart sometimes, where they know, hey, if this is going to sell, this guy doesn't want to show that I owe money because it's going to hurt his sale, so they're going to negotiate with me, and I think they're smart to that. So I do say that, and I think that the point of bringing that up as a sort of a warning is, if you're going to sell. I think we've seen some owners that will want to list the I just want to see if I can get $1 million for it. Sir, I can run comps right now. It's worth 400 grand. Like, but yeah, I just list it, and if people come and see it, but they're not actually serious about selling it. And I think that they don't realize sometimes that there's some negative effects to that, and to the tenants not being stable and not knowing what's going to happen. It's going to be harder to renew. It's going to be harder to collect, and things like that. So, just a heads up that I thought of when we were talking about that.
Yeah. Now, on the flip side, though, if you really think about this too, the one thing that so I say a lot of times we sell stuff that tenants don't even know, but a lot of times they do know, right? We got to get in there for appraisal, stuff like that, and maybe they don't know until later in the process. And once there's an idea that they might know, we want to have the full conversation with them, because The thing that a lot of tenants don't realize, and they get scared, right? And this makes me just kind of sad in a way. Like they think because you're selling it, like they could get kicked out. A lot of tenants don't realize
Mhm.
that the lease runs with the property. It's like I can sell this 10 more times and you technically have a lease for another 9 months. So you are good. So once they do get wind of it, I do try to reassure them just so they don't. I have had, and I don't think this happened for a long time. I think this is early on where it's like, I heard you're selling, so I found another place that I'm moving. It's like, no, that was that tenant was on a month to month, and it actually made the deal more difficult because the unit became vacant. We had to fix it up, but that was something where it's like they just thought they're going to get kicked out right away, and they took it upon themselves. But they do have rights in that sense. So we again, that's one of those scenarios where just human to human want to talk with them and make sure they know that they're safe and they're not going to get kicked out. So
Yeah. I just looked over. If I pronounce this wrong, I apologize. Bovine 5000. I agree 100%. If you're a property owner or PM and you're not tuning in, you got to lock in. we're committed to this for you guys. So I appreciate the comments and locking in.
well, we're coming up on time here. You got anything else? Any other closing thoughts you want to wrap on?
No, beyond what we talked about, and hopefully, like I said, we'll I know we don't necessarily want to be the squatters and pipe show, but I think we got one more week of good information, hopefully coming. So I'm hoping that by next Thursday that we have secured this unit that we've been working on, and I can have a good story to share with everyone. So tune in for that.
That's
Hopefully
awesome.
we'll have some good news there.
And I'm going to keep on. I'm going down this kick of taking our data that we have and kind of putting articles together. And I guess question for you: who do you think renewed more in our portfolio, city tenants or suburb tenants, which had a higher renewal rate,
Hmm.
and justify it?
I feel like we're finally at a point where the city is cool again, and people are starting to move back to the city the last few years. So I'm going to say city. Um, but what did it end up being?
So it was almost 2 full points higher. So they're about 72%, and suburbs were just over 70%. So as renewal rate, it's pretty similar sample size, roughly right around 500 each. So it was pretty fair. The increase for the city was a little higher too. So 7.6% average increase, and suburbs was 6.8% increase on rent. So they stuck around more and they paid a little more too. So again, this is limited to my data set, but I find this information somewhat valuable.
We got 2 more minutes. Denzel just asked another question. We got 2 minutes before we sign
For
off real quick
sure.
with the touch it.
For
Cool.
sure.
So Denzel just said, I inherited a tenant and the previous owner took a security deposit and their lease is ending. Can I return the deposit and start a new lease without it so I'm not responsible for it? We just had this conversation last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, so the inherited a tenant and the previous owner took a security deposit and their lease is ending. Can I return the security deposit and start a new lease without it? So yeah, definitely. So one thing we always encourage people buying buildings on is before closing, make the seller do that even. Then you inherit the tenant
Mhm.
with nothing, and you can renew their lease with some sort of non-refundable moving fee or something like that. Because again, if they're going to renew with you, but yeah, you can. I think one of the important things that you could do is liability and what they could claim is gray when it comes to security deposit. So you might return it and have them sign off on something that, hey, up until this point prior, I'm not responsible, and you kind of waive any claim on that. And then going forward, here's the terms of what we'll do. If that's if you're in the city, that's probably far more important if you're in the city. And if you are in the city, I probably would not. Let's see, start a new lease. Yeah, definitely start a new lease either with nothing or non-refundable moving fee at that point.
Yeah, and I would say honestly, if you are in the city, again, Cook County, we personally don't do security deposits even in Cook, some of the South Cook County, just because it's iffy-ish. But in the city, it's almost a bad practice to take a security deposit. Um, Even if you were mid lease, I would have them sign something and say, hey, we don't want the responsibility of holding on to this, so let's apply this to a months of rent and have you sign off. And the big key there, not to get screwed, is to remember to give them their 0.0. is it 001 or 01
001.
percent? Yeah, 001% interest, which is that's the funniest thing about the whole thing about, the interest is released every year. We have had everything from two in the last 5 years. We've had 2% mortgages and 8% mortgages, and that has not moved once. Like the city takes all the way till January 3rd to give us the new security deposit interest rate every year. They're like super late on it, and it comes back and they're like, oh yeah, it's the same as last year.
Yeah, it hasn't changed
That's
since 18. They actually, on the new one this year, it actually, instead of having the year listed out, it just says in these periods, it's still the 0.1 or whatever. And I made a dumb mistake when I first started, because I was one of those guys when we first started investing in Chicago back in the 2008-9. I'm like, I'm going to beat the system. I'm going to do security deposit. So I was out ahead of it. I was paying everyone their interest aggressively. My I don't know, maybe non-educated or slept through too much in college, did the math wrong, and I didn't move the decimal over. So I was handing everyone back $10 and $15 checks every year versus 10 and 15 cents. So definitely no one ever complained because they made a few more bucks off of me.
yeah, yeah.
So
So no, Denzel, I definitely would if it's in the city. Get on the renewal, have them do it, and just make sure you pay that interest when you give them the check. It's the check plus interest, and go from there.
Denzel, I'll put my information in there. If you have any more questions, you want to reach out, I could, if it's something Tim can help you with, I'll connect you, but I'll at least put my email there so you have some way to get a hold of us. So, all right, Tim, man, another
Cool, man.
fun wrap here. I'm looking forward to doing this again next week. And in the meantime, if anyone's looking for property management or tenant placement services, Tim's got coverage area that I don't. I have coverage area that Tim doesn't. So we can pretty much cover you anywhere here in the Chicago market. So have a good weekend, and we will see you next week.